to the Money RX for CRNAs podcast, where you go behind the scenes with host Brett Fellows, CFP, as he explores the unique opportunities and challenges facing certified registered nurse anesthetist along the path to financial independence. In each episode, Brett shares expert insights and actionable advice, equipping you with the tools you need to take control of your financial destiny and retire on your terms. And now, here's your host, Brett Fellows.
Welcome to Money RX for CRNAs. I am your host, Brett Fellows, and a financial planner just for CRNAs all over the country. You can check us out at oakcapitaladvisor.com. If you are new to the program, I'd like to take a moment and welcome you. We have new episodes every Wednesday, and we hope they'll be helpful to you so that you can gain some clarity and confidence when it comes to the many topics of money. And of course, if you're returning to the show, welcome also, but more importantly, thank you for coming back. Today, I'm going to start with a story, and it's about a weird function of human behavior. So we, as human beings, if we don't have landmarks visually, let's say, for example, you're blindfolded, well, then we will walk in circles instead of a straight line. There is something about our brains that connects through our eyes, obviously, that doesn't function if we don't have a landmark to fixate on. Now, some background on this. I saw this story. It was written by science.org, and there were a bunch of researchers who were collaborating to confirm this common belief that people walk in circles when they're lost. The researchers weren't really sure, so they wanted to do their own test to see if this was actually true. So, they performed this experiment. They blindfolded people and then outfitted them with GPS receivers and then put them in a big field, and they simply tried to get them to walk in a straight line. And here's what's crazy. The participants were only blindfolded before they were asked to walk, just moments before. So they knew both where they were and where they had to walk to. This was a large open field, and they couldn't do it. So most participants in this large field simply started to meander all over the place, which you'd think would happen, and they're ending up in circles, sometimes in a circle as small as 20 meters in diameter. Now, here's some of the things that the researchers thought in trying to explain why this might be happening. One thing they thought was, maybe we all have different lengths in the size of our legs. Perhaps most of us have one leg longer than the other. But no, they found no strong bias based on leg length or discrepancies in leg length. And they even gave some participants thicker soles on their shoes just to see if that would affect things, and it totally didn't. So they eliminated that hypothesis. But the total findings ended up suggesting that the issue isn't physical. It's a function of our brain. It's simply a combination of muscles and joints and sensors no longer communicating with one another. They said that when people are blindfolded, the brain has to plot a course for straight ahead based on limited information, including input from the vestibular system, which informs the sense of balance, and movement sensors in the muscles and joints. All of those signals have very small errors. And so what happens is all of these small errors, when people have limited information, combined with small errors over time, ends up leading people in circles. Then they tried this same research both in a forest and a desert, but not blindfolded this time. Now, they first tried this exercise during a sunny day, both in the forest and in the desert, and guess what? Everyone did fine. They were all able to walk in a straight line all on their own. The researchers then did this exercise when it was a cloudy, dark day just after the sun had gone down, so visibility really was not that great. And they ended up walking in circles. So it goes back to the point that our brains in these situations have limited information, And then all of those signals that happen within our brains and bodies start actually being small errors. Why are we talking about this? Because we do this exact same thing with our money. Because of limited information and because of small errors that we inevitably make, some or many of them avoidable, we as human beings typically will walk in circles with our money and our financial decisions for our whole lives. So back to the analogy with walking in the field. We wonder why we didn't make it to the other side. Why didn't I make it where I clearly thought I should be? But instead, I've only been walking in circles the whole time. So for today's episode, I wanted to touch upon a few topics in relation to this. But here's an invitation I would make to you listening. As you're listening to this, if you're recognizing parts of your life where you feel you're not making the financial progress you thought you should be making, after all of this time as a CRNA, or making your progress but you just really can't see or tell, well, I'd be thinking about the areas that you feel like maybe you're struggling to make progress. And it's possible that you've been walking in circles because of these two things mentioned: a lack of information and small errors along the way, and then not knowing any better, so you just keep going in circles. So I want to bring up a few pretty common areas where this happens. And more important to just bringing them up, I want to talk about some of the things that people can do to take the proverbial blindfolds off, if you will, and be able to have more information and to eliminate small errors. I like that the researchers put in their report that the body and the brain make these small errors that accumulate over time. I like that that was in there because, and many of you have seen this in your life, I'm sure, you can ruin a big net worth, or you can get rid of a high income. You can waste your wealth, not even making huge mistakes. You can ruin all that stuff with enough small ones. And health and wellness are the same thing, right? You don't have to necessarily have a big health event to ruin your health. You can ruin your health with enough small missteps for a long enough period of time. So now let's talk about what I think the prescription might be for making these errors and then being able to walk in a straight line. And I want to say this too, though. Someone's straight line is not everyone's straight line. And that's worth saying because not everybody has the same input. Now, you probably have already heard me say this. Personal finance is amazingly personal. Where you're going is going to be different for someone else. Right now, the very same day I'm recording this, I have meetings with 2 different clients, both of whom are retiring in the next 90 days. And it's funny how the endpoint, their vision of where they want to go for each of these people are different, and the motivations are different. Even though the financials are fairly similar, and the financial outcome is very similar, there are still other non-financial outcomes that make it different for people. And I also like to think about the importance of direction over speed. If you're pointed in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how fast you're traveling. Conversely, if you're locked on to your destination, all progress will be positive. No matter how slow you're going, you'll reach your goal eventually. And this is something I field from clients a lot. I think a lot of times one of the mistakes people make is they're so worried about the speed in which they're moving, how quickly they're going to XYZ, before they've even decided what that XYZ thing is. I think this is one of the top things I see. I'm often asked, what's the number one mistake CRNAs make financially? And I usually will answer that it's just being too unorganized. CRNAs have surprisingly complex lives, and I think that based on that complexity, making random decisions with money over the course of a 30-year career can be disastrous sometimes. So again, the prescription, I think, is just getting some organization to the direction of your financial life. When you start organizing things, and this is the very first thing we do with new clients for about a month when we're onboarding them, is just organizing. So we're organizing the value of their assets. And not just the easy stuff like bank accounts and investment accounts, but what's the value of your business if you have one, and all of your real estate, or the personal property you own in your house, and the other assets you've got. And then let's list all of your debts, and let's look not only at the balances, but let's look at what interest rates you have on those, how many months are left, and what are they all for. We create a full balance sheet. And then there's income, tax returns, and insurance, and spending. And what do you save in a year? And what is your net worth? All of these things we do with clients in the beginning of our relationship. Because that's the best first step to take to not only combating the problem of being too disorganized and making random financial decisions in a career, but more importantly, to get to what do you even want? Do you want out of nursing at 50? And if so, how wealthy do you think you're going to be at 50 when you're getting out of nursing? Or want to be? Do you see yourself playing some role in nursing when you're 65? Whether you will remain an employee or start your own practice, can you see yourself doing something like that? And along the way, are you on a 5-day-a-week schedule? Or are you on a 4, a 2? Are you no clinical and all administrative? What do you want out of this CRNA career, and then everything else outside of it with family, friends, and hobbies? And it's funny, and I'm sure you're similar, when I ask somebody this question before they've been meticulously organized, and I ask, what do you want out of this career? The answer I mostly get is really kind of general. It's often some number like 5 million. And oddly enough, they're always in increments of 2.5 million or 7.5 or 10 million. But once you get past some of those answers, then you get to the more detailed answers on what you want. Like they actually say, Brett, I want to coach my kids' soccer team, and that's on Thursdays. And you know what? I work on Thursdays. So it needs to work out where I change my schedule. So once you get organized on all of your financial parts of your life, then your answers on what you want more out of life start to become more specific. And the other thing too is, and I'll just say this from experience as a new empty nester, what you want out of life changes as you get older. Like, where do you live? Where do you want to live? It changes, and when it does, having organized financial data is just so key in helping you define your changing goalposts and then what strategies you can employ to get there. So I think organization is a great action item to start with. Just that step alone will take off more of the blinders and reduce more of the errors than almost anything else will. I mean, if you think about it, it's normal for us to go in circles in our career. We wake up on Monday, go to work, get through the week, and then it's the weekend, and then just do that over and over for years and years. And if you think about it, that's kind of a circle. It's easy to just put your head down and go to work and go in a career circle and not really ask yourself, what do I really want out of this career? I mean, CRNAs, nursing is evolving so much, and it's becoming more diverse in the types of career paths you can choose, that I think you would miss out if you didn't take some time to get very organized and really ask yourself some deep questions about what you want in the career as of a CRNA. It's so diverse that there are so many really, really good options that can allow for more flexibility, more lifestyle, or way more money than previous generations of CRNAs ever had. It's all possible. And I just think it would be a huge mistake if you weren't taking an opportunity to get really organized and asking yourself more questions about what do you want out of this career as time goes on. It is too easy to get stuck in the status quo. And I don't think a lot of people realize, because of the diversity of nursing and diversity of CRNA options, a career doesn't have to look the same forever. Those crazy night shifts when you were low on the totem pole likely isn't what you're going to be doing in your 40s. And even with a more scaled back schedule in your 40s with a peak income, that doesn't have to be how you do it in your 50s. You can go down to that easier schedule as you get into your 50s and 60s, while still maintaining the benefits of having longevity in the career of CRNAs. Because again, even if you're working a reduced schedule and you're still bringing in $100,000 a year, that's significant income that doesn't have to come out of a retirement portfolio. So taking the time to make these adjustments and really looking at what you want out of this career, it will give you longevity and it will ensure that you don't burn out from the stress of being a CRNA. And another thing that happens is most people don't make decisions on what they really want until life forces them to. And it's usually because of something not great. Like if something bad happens or traumatic, which is normal, but it's usually something dramatic that has to happen before we take a step back and say, why am I doing this? Where am I headed? Why am I working this way? Why am I spending money on these things? It's the old adage of the hard way is the easy way and the easy way is the hard way. If your life is fine and you love it, but you're going to start getting different opinions or a different pair of eyes to look at your situation, you're going to hire a financial advisor, you're going to ask them to scrutinize every penny of income coming into your household and then going out from there. Well, that's just a really hard shift in mindset. But if you can do that, if you're lucky enough to not have a traumatic thing happen in your life, and you can start doing that thinking earlier, it will lead you to better questions. Maybe not all the answers, but it will give you better questions. You start to ask yourself where you want to be, where you are intentional with your time. And so this goes back to the whole analogy of being blindfolded and not walking in a straight line because you don't have context, you don't have data, you don't have information, and you start making small errors along the way that pile up and finally derail you. If you do these things that I'm talking about, it starts to take the blindfolds off and it gives you more information. This is especially important when knowing when you can make work optional. There are a lot of people that work themselves into circles, and they don't even realize they can actually stop walking. They've made it, and they're still walking in circles at their destination, and they don't realize they can stop walking now. They're done. Some people just keep going, really a little anxious and stressed, not knowing that they're there, that they'd made it. They're all at the place that they wanted to arrive at, and they can stop walking. They just don't know it. I've seen people like that, and then all of a sudden be like, oh my gosh, I can take my foot off the gas pedal and I can scale back my time. What is funny about that though, is I've seen people do that, and then they actually end up having more energy for their career, and they continue to grow and work more. Purely though, at this point, for the fun. It's just passion then. It's not a have to. But the key is, they now have the information, so they feel more confidence and clarity in where they're headed and why. Okay, I'll wrap this up. I think I know you inherently know this stuff already. I mean, I can give you examples of where people go wrong. And I talk a lot about common mistakes that people make financially on our content. But I think you know the areas of your life where they feel like they're just in a circular motion. You've got to get out of that pattern. You've got to take the blindfold off, and you've got to head in a new direction. I believe you already know what those areas in your life are. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling that and you go, I know what they are, reach out to me. Let's have a chat. I promise you it will be educational and we'll teach you what we think would help. And if it turns out that we might actually be able to help you, then we'll be great partners together and we'll work with you to get you walking in a straight line. So I hope you found today's episode helpful as you think about your financial life and where you're headed with it. And again, given that everyone is different and everyone has unique needs and circumstances, it's nearly impossible for me to cover everything. So if you have any unanswered questions about your direction and where your savings or Social Security or taxes in retirement when it comes to your financial plan, or maybe you just need a recommendation or a resource, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can shoot me a note. My direct email is brett@oakcapitaladvisor.com, or directly schedule time with me by going to our website, oakcapitaladvisor.com, and click the free pre-op assessment link where you can schedule a call with me at your convenience. And take a minute too and give the show a review on iTunes or wherever it is you listen to your podcast. We would really appreciate that. It would definitely make it easier for other CRNAs to find us when they're searching for podcasts. Thank you for listening to this episode of Money RX for CRNAs, and have a great week.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This podcast does not engage in rendering legal, financial, or other professional services.